Right, I'm going to be analysing one of the three music videos I've chosen in the form of Goodwin's theories, and I'm going to apply them to Five Finger Death Punch's Wrong Side of Heaven. Now, what this music video is, it is a strong narrative performance, and the reason why it's a narrative performance is because it's based on American veterans. The song was made to promote the veterans being left either homeless or forgotten or left to basically after the war they've sort of dealt with PTSD and different sort of financial issues, so they're not being taken care of even though they're taking care of the country. And this whole video is narrative is to show that the soldiers and the contrast and the things they put themselves through just for the, for the freedom of their country and what have you, and how they're being mistreated. Yeah. Well, from the get-go, you can already tell that this is very, very strongly based upon them wanting to help and spread the word and message of how the veterans are being forgotten about. So, because throughout the entirety of this video, there's a lot of text and there's a lot of factual information explaining the different aspects of veterans being almost, I wouldn't say like forgotten about is a very vivid sort of explanation, but they are sort of being mistreated, especially because of, like I said, that they put their lives on the line so you don't have to, and how they're just being wrongly mistreated is, in my opinion, wrong. So with this video as well, there's a lot of strong visuals when it comes to this video as well. The visuals, there's many different visuals in this. There's strong, but there's also very subtle. So for instance, just in the few shots that we've had, we've seen homeless people who are, well, I don't know if it actually are veterans in this, but they are portrayed to be veterans in this. And it's just like the little subtleties, how they pan from them in the war or them in fighting, panning back to them, in dirty clothes on the streets with ripped sort of, just kind of like it shows just the falling from grace, how far they've came from, being, the top, elite of the military to falling down to just being a common, common homeless man or woman. Another thing they do a lot is they obviously, like I said, they pan from them serving in the military to them being homeless, and they show the conditions in the war and the conditions when they're on the streets. And there's a lot of similarities between the two, and I think it's quite clever how they did it. The narrative story of this is they want us to realise that there are a lot of veterans that are being left homeless, and more veterans that are even fighting currently who have the risk of being homeless and just forgotten about, and how they pan from the war zone and how they're being filthy, dirty, covered in, debris, and then panning back to them being on the streets, being covered by debris and then dirt, and the contrast between the two and how they sort of like bring them together is quite clever. I spoke to God today, and she said that she's ashamed. What have I become? What have I done? I spoke to the devil today, and he swears he's not to blame. And I understood, 'cause I feel the same. Again, when I was talking about the subtle visuals earlier, here, when the soldier's kissing the picture of his daughter, that later on in the video you actually see a little girl hand him a flower, and then the mum pulls him away because obviously he's homeless, and she doesn't want anything to, she doesn't want her daughter to have anything to do with him. But then it's just this whole video. It's very clever how they do it. The whole video is just filled with these little sort of hints, these little sort of things. How they are people. You know what I mean? They put their lives on the line, and then to be treated how they are, and then to be looked at how they are. It's quite clever how they've done it. Even in relation to the lyrics of these songs are quite, because obviously when you're watching the music video, you look at the visuals, and sometimes the actual lyrics themselves skip over. So like you skip things, like, or you don't process it as strongly as you should. But the lyrics in this video are very, very potent, very powerful lyrics, because the whole point of this, the song is called "Wrong Side of Heaven," and the reason for this is because the soldiers go into these war zones, these active war zones, and put themselves through hell. They put themselves through, violence, deaths, watching, friends, possibly even family die, injuries, things like that. And the whole purpose of this is, you think after going through all this, they'd be rewarded. They'd come back to, to a hero's welcome, or to an easier life after they've either been discharged or retired or things like that. But a lot of the time, as the facts have been showing up on the screen, a lot of the time this doesn't happen. And so it's the wrong side of heaven. So you think you'd come back to this hero's welcome, and you're not. You come back to this poverty-stricken, very grim life, because you come back and you're left for homeless. You've got nothing to come back to. You're being seen as scum by just all the common people walking past. It happens a lot, and it's how he says that in one of the lyrics. It says, "I'm no hero. I'm not made of stone." And it's one of the things that it just shows that this can happen to anyone. It's not ordinary people that this happens to. I say people who have served in the military, even high-ranking officials who have served in the military, can come back to being poor, coming back to living on the streets and having no help. It's not just an everyday common folk sort of situation. It happens to people working behind the desk. It happens to people working in battlefields. It happens to people who have an office job. It's things like these. It's not just stricken to these, like a specific group of people that this happens to. It happens to anyone. And I think this shows that it's quite sad how these people put their lives on the line, and it still happens to them.
She sounded just like me. What have I done? And who have I become? I saw the devil today.
Now, in terms of this video, I just want to go back a bit quickly. And I said earlier on in my explanation that this video has a lot of vivid imagery. It has a lot of, some would say disturbing, some would say, just very true to life imagery in it when it comes to the actual shots themselves. So here, when the soldier gets shot, it just shows how, I can't think of a word. It shows how horrible the conditions are, obviously, in war. But it tries to force the point across with very, very strong imagery of soldiers getting shot or injured or dying or wounded, because I don't think people understand what these men go through, and that's what this whole style of video is meant to portray. It's meant to portray that you don't understand the things they go through, the things they lose, the people they lose, or the injuries they suffer, or the mental backlash they get from this. And I don't think people understand just how harsh military life is. But then to come from all this, then just to be kicked to the curb, per se, by society and just forgotten about, it is quite wrong. So, carrying on.
I heard from God today. She sounded just like me.
See, I'm going to go to this shot in particular. The reason why I like this shot is because there's a lot of close-ups throughout the entirety of this music video. But this extreme close-up, I want to take a shot because it took a look at the eyes, and obviously because the eyes are very important. Now, the reason why I think the eyes are very important in this situation, because you can always tell when someone's tired, right? When tired, you get bags into their eyes, you get like sort of, that look of fatigue and wear. And then the reason why they focus on the eyes because they want to portray that, because obviously the man who's on the curb, he's looking at a picture of his daughter, but he's tired, he's fatigued, he's covered in dirt, he's got his clothes all ripped. And I think it's just that further emphasis of just making sure that the message is clear that these people are living in such horrible conditions outside of the battlefield, outside of war, and it's just I think it's just a very what's the word? I think it's very underlooked. It's very overlooked. So, for instance, if I was just watching this without the context, I just look, okay, it's a close up of a man's eye. But then I think it can be interpreted many different ways. So.
She sounded just like me. What have I done? And who have I become? I saw the devil today, and he looked a lot like me. I looked away. I turned away. Arms wide open. I stand alone. I'm no hero, and I'm not made of stone.
Also, red's used a lot in this music video because red smoke anyway. Obviously, the color of obviously there's blood and things and such like that. But then the red smoke being in the background, well, it could be determined in many different ways. It can be determined in anger because of how they're treated now, obviously after their services, or it could be like the color of blood, the color of loss. People who have lost friends, family, like I said earlier, due to war. So little subtle messages in just like one simple frame or one simple shot of the video. Or, as I'm listening to the song, it could be considered that as well. They're in the wrong side of hell. That could be considered they're in a hellish sort of environment. So hence why red and the smoke helps encapsulate that. This is a very important shot as well, because as much as this video is about how veterans are mistreated, it also shows that not all of them, end up this way. It's only a select few, but it is, as the facts have been shown up, it is dramatically more than what you'd think it is. And obviously, but this shows the contrast of lives. This veteran on the right here has obviously left the service to become a policeman, and the one on the left has obviously ended up homeless. So I love how they've done that. I love how they've showed they both have the tattoo, and the tattoo symbolises obviously the same unit in the military, and it just shows how their lives have completely gone separate ways, and how one's turned out, some could say, for the better, whereas the others would say, oh, he's still serving. So yeah, I like how they've shown that. Now, I probably should have talked about it here, to be honest, because this is definitely the epitome of polar opposites. This is showing the clear divide between poverty and, to be honest, quite, from the looks of it, very comfortable lifestyle. He's obviously in the three-piece suit. You know, he's just paid his driver. You know what I mean? He's obviously come out of the military, a very rich and, you know, lavish life. And it just, as I say, this is just as I was just stating like 2 minutes ago. It's just a clear opposite of what this song is about. Well, this music video is about. It's trying to tell you that, look, some people come out okay, but not as many as you believe. You know, most of the time they come out and they're either in poverty and living on the streets, or they come back and it's unfortunate and they come back and end up, you know, taking their own lives, or they come back with PTSD, which leaves them mentally, you know, worn. And it's quite a horrible thing to think about. But then this is what this video is about. It's drawing that attention to the message. Now I want to go back again. It's subtle. This video has a lot of subtlety in it, whereas much as like a lot of the time it's very vivid, very like in your face imagery of like soldiers being bullied. But then, like I said earlier, a lot of things go over your head. Subtlety is key when it comes to like, you know, strong, powerful messages, because there's little things like that you just don't think about. So if you go back to obviously these two, if you go back earlier in the video, then these two obviously the one person I'm looking at right now saved the other person's life. And it's just those things. He saved a man's life, and this is how he's treated. But then you can look at it like this. This man says here. Oh, I'm just going to go back a bit. And so he says, "Then you saved my life, brother." And it's saying it's the show of this unity, despite everything that's happened. He's still internally grateful for you know, for him saving his life. And it's really heartbreaking. I think that is probably the most powerful thing in this entire video, is the fact they've got the close up of this man's face, and he's just, you know, showing his lips moving, saying, "Oh, you saved my life, brother." Obviously, with the shallow depth of field that it's got, just focusing on the face and just focusing on that, I think it hits home. It really does. And then it lists a bunch of websites to go to enlist and enroll for help. Right, and that was my video analysis of Five Finger Death Punch's Wrong Side of Heaven.